Harihi Om. Om Gajananam Bhudaganadisevidam Kavitta Jambho Balasara Pakshidham Umasudam Soga Vinashakaranam Namami Vigneshwara Pada Pankajam. Om Gajananam Mahakayam Viknarajam Vinayakam Vishvesham Vishvashaksham Ganeshayam Namo Namaha. Om Shrim Hrim Klim Ganeshwaraya Brahmaswarupaya Charave Sarvasiddhi Pradeshaya Vigneshaya Namo Namaha. Om Sahanao Bhavatu Sahanao Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavaditamastu ma Vitvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Parave Sarvalokhanam Visajay Babaroginaha Nidaye Sarva Vidyanam Sri Dakshinamurtaye Namaha. Om Sri Sathya Sai Suraya. Sai Ram. Very nice to be back after a short reprieve of a week. But it's good because, initially, when I thought about the 14 or 15 weeks, I actually wanted to end, in the last Sunday of the year. But somehow it never worked out that way, and we were finishing on the 19th. And that thought sort of lingered in my mind for a while, I wanted to finish on the 26th, but, I can't extend it for some reason. And there was no plan, okay, 19th, so be it. And then, suddenly it just happened that, I became a little unwell. And, last week couldn't proceed as planned. And now it so happens that, we will finish on the last Sunday of 2021, having covered, 15 weeks of, the extract of the various Upanishads, or 13 Upanishads to be precise. So all his will, all his will. But the point is, intention must physically arise from the conscious mind, must be then registered in the subconscious mind, and the subconscious mind will then go and link with the superconscious energy, the universe, and bring that to fruition. Always the case. So the thinking must be right? The application must be put in the right place, then leave it, right? You try and address that issue yourself, then the subconscious will not do anything. And the subconscious doesn't approach the superconscious will not respond, right? So we move on to the 8th week and we look at something called Katha Upanishad, right? Katha Upanishad. And of course, because of the regionalization of languages in India, in the north, it is also known as Katha Upanishad, right? Whether it's an A or O at the end, it really doesn't matter because what we're looking at is the content, right? Katha Upanishad, in some places you would see Katha Upanishad, and in other places it's referred to as Katha Upanishad. Between 5th to the 1st century BCE, and again, excuse me, it's one of the Mukhya Upanishads, right? Significant Upanishads. And it belongs, remember I said to you, every Upanishad has an auspices and an umbrella under which it works. And this one works with Yajur-veda. And Yajur-veda, I told you, has 2 divisions, Shukla Yajur-veda and the Krishna Yajur-veda. So Katha Upanishad is very much attached, linked, connected with Krishna Yajur-veda, right? Now, there are 2 chapters with 3 sections in each. So total about six sections over 2 chapters. And the fundamental focus of Katha Upanishad is the Atman. What is the Atman, right? And what happens to the body and to the Atman when the body perishes or when the body dies, right? So 2 things. This Upanishad talks about the Atman, the self, the real self that you are, the real self that you are. It talks about that self being in existence. And it also talks about what type of knowledge is the highest form of knowledge, and which highest form of knowledge can give you that bliss or contentment, right? So this is the main focus or the central theme of Katha Upanishad. And of course, the rishi that came up with this is called Katha Maharishi, right? His name is Katha as well. Hence the word Katha Maharishi. Hence the word Katha Upanishad. Now, the first thing perhaps we should throw our minds to is, you enter this world. How do you enter this world? When you come out of your mother's womb, you enter this world. But you enter as an innocent, unknowing life. And then, of course, you go through life, you go through school, you go through university, you go through working life, you get so much of knowledge, right? Some do just, come out with a certificate, some do a certificate, a diploma, some do a degree, a master's, some do a PhD, some mad people like me might do too. However much knowledge you accumulate, at the end of the day, the Upanishads tell you what you know is minute compared to what you don't know, right? What you know is minute compared to what remains unknown. Very simply. So instead of going after certain types of knowledge, you should focus on acquainting yourself with one type of knowledge that will give you all other knowledge, without problem. But sadly, we are on the path that, chases what we call materialistic knowledge and, all the knowledge that gives us wealth and comfort and, power and position and all of that. But if you strip all that at the end of the day, how much of you do you know? How much of yourself do you know? How much of your true self do you know? That is the self that this Upanishad talks about, right? Then, of course, you got many lives, isn't it? You come and go, punarjanmaha. Your storage of knowledge may grow, right? But it will always only remain a fragment of the whole, and you have no idea of the extent of that whole. All you will know is you are knowing only a few drops of the vast ocean, right? Even Adi Shankara himself said that, many times when he was, praised and said, he who has drank the ocean of knowledge, he who is the jnani among the jnanis. And Shankara stopped this when he went to Madurai in one, king's palace. The praises were being just leveled on him. And he said, what I know is but a few drops of the vast ocean. So do not spread these rumors that I know everything. If Shankara himself says that, and I think sometimes we meet so many people in our lives who says, tell me something that I don't know. I think I've studied everything and I know most things. We hear people talk like that, and then we hear jnanis who say they don't know much. In fact, they don't know nothing. What they know is just a few drops, right? So this is exactly what Katha Upanishad is saying. The great metaphysical questions about the meaning of life, about the purpose of existence, usually baffle man's intellect. Unless, of course, you accede to dogmas, right? I mean, otherwise, what happens? You only speculate, isn't it? You only speculate about possibilities. This could be because of that, that could be because of this, and you ignore certain profound matters and you just get on with life. It's okay, when it comes, we'll cross the bridge. How do you know which bridge will come when in your life, right? So my question to you, for you to think, is there a cure for this limitation of our knowing capacity? Is there a cure for this limitation of our knowing capacity? And of course, the more we think about it, the more troublesome it grows, isn't it? Is it possible for you to know everything that you need to know in order for you to evolve to the next stage of no birth? That's the question. And that's what we will be talking about in this case, right? I mean, Katha Upanishad, in a sense, although the word Katha means several things, and I come to that, it talks about, you know, the basic Upanishadic wisdom, the basic Upanishadic wisdom that relates to the deepest facts of human life, you know, the nature of a person's true self, true identity. You know, just like when Shankara met Lord Shiva, you know, up in the mountains as a Chandala. And Shankara, being Shankara, in his mind, he was already composing something, right? But he saw this Chandala approaching. And, you know, he instinctively said, get out of my way, you know. Whereupon the Chandala said, what is it that you want to be removed out of your way? For if I remove the body, my soul remains. How can you remove your soul? And the soul pervades in the universe. At that time, that moment, Shankara realized that this was none other than Lord Shiva. And at that very moment, he burst out with the Nirvana Shatakam. Fantastic, you know, Nirvana Shatakam. Shivoham, 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 Shivoham. That's the last line, that's the chorus. Anyway, Katha Upanishad said, wisdom is key to taking you from one stage of knowledge to another stage of knowledge, and then from that stage of knowledge to yet a greater or bigger stage of knowledge, right? The great result is that you slowly peel off layer by layer until you reveal your true self. And what you might see might shock you, because it might just be a fully blossomed lotus. And a fully blossomed lotus is the sign of the Sahasrara Chakra. The moment that opens, boom, you're gone, right? So this is the highest form of truth, the wisdom of self-realization. This is what this one talks about. And, you know, strangely, I can also add my own points on this by saying age is immaterial in order to get that self-realization. In order to tap into the powers of that wisdom, you know, you don't need to be of a certain age, you know. Gone are the days where, you know, your elders used to say, oh, don't worry, you know, in your old age, you can go to all these temples and do all these pujas and all of that. You must have good health in your old age. And the times, the day and age that we live in, right, it's really Kali Yuga. So you can see young children are born with disease, you know, children growing up, they've got disease. Of course, young people, you know, people in the 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, of course. So my question is, you don't need an age to become spiritual, right? You can be 3 years old and be spiritual. You can be 8 years old and spiritual. You can be 10 years old. Or you can wait until you become 60. You're really homebound because you're not physically fit. You can't go anywhere. So how will you go to temples? Or any place of, you know, spiritual retreat for that matter, right? Whereas if you do all this when you're young and able, forget the young part, when you're able-bodied, then in your olden age, you can just sit on your veranda, sit on your lazy chair, close your eyes and go to each temple on a daily basis. Every day one temple, right? And to do that successfully, you only need to have gone to 365 temples in your lifetime. Every year you can repeat that. You know, it's like a playlist, you can shuffle it and think, okay, today I shall go to, you know, Tirupati. Tomorrow I shall go to Katirkhama. Next day I will go to, you know, Shabarimala. Next day I will go to Palani. Next day I will go to, you know, all the 12 Dwadasa Jyotirlingas, Stalas. Oh, it's up to you, right? Now, one of the things that the Katha Upanishad says is it first tries to push you away, saying this is a path, it's likened to walking on a sharp razor. At the end of that path, at the end of that razor is that knowledge waiting for you. So you must realize, you see how it attracts you and then puts a few challenges in your path. You know, it attracts your interest in the teachings, but then it also suggests the difficulty that you will endure as you tread this path. You know, verily, in the first chapter, right? The first chapter and the first adhyaya, it says, arise, awake. Awake through your learning, O excellent ones. You know why it says, O excellent ones? Because when you were born, you were already programmed to reach that. But in between, we program ourselves, we reprogram ourselves, and then we reprogram the reprogram that we have reprogrammed. And hence all the problems, right? He said, the wise ones, this chapter, the first adhyaya says, the wise ones describe the path to be impassable as a razor's edge when sharpened, difficult to tread on, but when reached, is bliss beyond imagination. And fantastic. Just reading that makes you think, doesn't matter, sharp or not, I'm going to go and try. Yes, some of you say, well, sharp, okay. Let's wait for a while, you know. It also says, right, Katha Upanishad also says, once you start, you may not get a smooth journey because you may be sidetracked. This is talking about us forgetting our true purpose. You know, it's beautifully written, right? In a poetic, in some parts, in a poetic manner, and in some parts in a prosaic manner. Right? Says you start the journey with a notion, right, with a motion, and then you get coerced by your emotions. So you lose track. And this is the desire, right? Ichcha, you know, your desire. So, Katha Upanishad. What is the meaning of this Katha? Katha literally means distress. It is also the name of, as I said, you know, the founder of the Krishna Yajur-veda branch, you know, Katha Maharishi. It is also the name given to female pupils of the Yajur-veda Katha schools, right? But for our purpose, Katha or Katho or Kataka means a story, a legend, a tale, right? Well, all of these are in some ways relevant to Katha Upanishad, right? Obviously, Katha is a story, you know. A Katha hai, you know, Katha Upanishad. So let's look at the structure. Like I said, it has 2 chapters divided into 3 sections in each chapter. And totally, if you take the number of verses in each chapter, in each section of each chapter, it all comes out to 118, 119, divided by, you know, 20, 15, 17, 18, like that. Okay. We're not going to go through each one of them. Like I said, my job is to extract the fundamentals, the significant points of these Upanishads and give it to you. Hence, the title of the course is called Wisdom of the Upanishads. So rather than you know, plodding through, you know, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of pages, it's only through divine grace that, you know, I myself am able to do this, right? Because it's, you know, it's not an easy task, especially when you hold on to a full-time job and you also have to, you know, do your responsibilities as a householder, as a grahastha, right? So I'm still in that second stage, right? I'm going to hit the third one very soon. And the third one also, I know I won't be long there, straight sannyasa after that. I have to finish my responsibilities as a householder first, you know, with his grace. So as I said, the timeline when this was created or written is between the 5th and the 1st century BCE, right? So the story here, because it's Katha Upanishad, it's a story. So most of you think, finally he's going to tell us a story, right? So the story is about a person called Nachiketa, right? And the brilliant thing about Nachiketa is the story goes in a way that where he gets Lord Yama, you know, not Yamaraj, Dharmaraj himself, right? The one who comes and knocks on your door and say, time's up, my boy. You're coming with me. No reference, no one can give you a call and say, can you leave this man alone or this lady alone, they are known to me. No political connection can stop that. No economic connection can stop that. No amount of wealth can stop him. Nothing can stop him. He will just come and put the noose rope and take you. That's it. He will take you means he'll take your soul, right? The body will be there, right? The body becomes lifeless, limbless, and all of that. So this is a story of Nachiketa and how he became the disciple, the Shishya of Lord Yama himself, and how he became a Jnani, a Jivan Mukta, as a result of becoming Yama's disciple. Okay. But this story is very important because it is also mentioned in the Taittiriya Upanishad. I didn't want to talk about it then because I know I have to talk about it in the Katha Upanishad itself. So it's written there in the Taittiriya Upanishad. It also comes in the Mahabharata, right? Where Krishna is talking to Bhishma, and Bhishma is talking to Karna, and Bhishma is talking to Arjuna, and the story of what happens after death comes. And, Nachiketa is mentioned there. So this Upanishad specifically, right, is known on account of its clarity and depth of imagination, right? And of course, many commentators, both from the East and from the West, right, have always referred to Katha Upanishad, especially in the Bhagavad Gita, right? Max Muller, Paul Deussen, all these great writers or commentators on the Eastern books, spiritual books, have always said that, the Katha is like a surgeon's scalpel, so sharp and so to the point. So it cuts deep. It cuts deep not into your flesh, it cuts deep into your mind so that you can think. So let's go back to how it all started, right? Nachiketa's father is someone called Yajna-Sravas or Rishi. He is also known as another name called Rishi Gautama, right? He later became famous as Gautama Maharishi, but his name was Yajna-Sravas. And he got that name Yajna-Sravas because he was a keen performer of yajnas or havans or homas, as you know, right? And of course, when you complete the homa, it is the tradition that you give gifts to people who have come. So at the completion of one of the homas that he was doing, excuse me, he was giving away cows, dana after the homa. He was giving away cows. His son was there. His son was Nachiketa, a young boy about 10, 11 years old, right? He was looking what his father was doing. He's always been part and parcel of this dana and dharma that his father does. And all the yajnas, he was sitting and watching and learning. But this particular yajna that his father did, he was giving away all old cows as dana, as charity. He was giving away old cows. These old cows were old and they were not capable of eating grass or drinking water, much less yielding milk. They were too old to be used for any useful purpose. Let's put it that way. So Nachiketa was, he was virtuous, he was intelligent. He realized that, what his father is doing is not dharmic. See, at that young age, he knew when you give, he's teaching us another thing, yeah? When you give only what is good. What is good for yourself is the fit thing to give another. What is not fit for you is unfit to be given as dana or dharma. So he asked his father. He said, Father, you're doing all these good deeds as a result of this yajna. Why are you giving away these old cows that are good for nothing? Isn't that going to accrue bad karma for you? Of course, the boy had a good intention of saving his father, from a sorrowful fate or woeful fate. So he was asking him all these questions. His father said, don't tell me what to offer. I know what to give. Then Nachiketa asked, in the same way, who would you give me up to? Who would you give me up to? You're giving the cows all to everybody, right? If it comes to that question, who would you give me up to? And he kept disturbing his father with that question, right? His father was so incensed by his constant disturbance and interruptions that he shouted, "You, I'm giving away to the god of death, Yama." Nachiketa resolved that his father's words must not be falsified. He said, okay. They were uttered with the intention of being uttered. Therefore, I have to do what he wants me to do. He wants to send me. He said that he wants to give me up to Yama. So I will ask him to give me up to Yama. So he persuaded the father to make him an offering in a strict ritualistic style, right? You know, it was called dravyas. What we put inside the homas are called dravyas. So he said, make me a dravya like you said you want to offer me, and then recite the Yama mantra and send me. It's a gift to Yama, right? Then his father realized that, he had no power to retract what he has said. And that is why the lesson here for us is always think before we say something. If there is a risk of you saying something bad, don't say it. Learn to control, not to speak, no matter what people say. That's why God has given both ears on either side. You see, go in one side, come out the other side. If it's good and it's going to be beneficial, go in and go up. Otherwise, one-way street, right out. Anyway, so he did the rituals and he offered Nachiketa. So the Nachiketa's soul went up. Of course, by offering him, I don't mean taking him and putting him in the yajna, right? By mantric vibrations, right? Mantrahina, tantrahina, yantrahina, 3 ways of worship. So when you're doing yajnas, it's mantrahina. When you're not doing yajnas, you do tantric, right? Tantric is all, science, how you relate to the universe. Many videos you may have seen Swami sometimes, doing some science. If you go into the tantric world, it's all about science. No sound, just science, right? Metaphysics. Anyway, so when he went to Yama's abode, as his soul, elevated, he went to Yama's abode, the kingdom of Yama. He waited at the door because Yama was not in. Yama was on his rounds collecting. I'm going here to collect, there to collect, there to collect, there to collect. So Nachiketa waited outside the entrance to Yama's kingdom, Yama's abode. Yama came 3 days later, 3 days, 3 nights, right? And Yama saw Nachiketa and he felt very sorry for this young boy who was there, because Yama can see, how old the soul is. And then, of course, he knows the body. And he says, why are you here? It's not your time yet, and you waited for 3 days, 3 nights. I'm so sorry I made you wait. I had no idea you were coming. Nobody comes to me. I go to them and bring them back, So he said, I tell you what, because you waited for 3 days, I will give you 3 boons. I will grant you 3 boons. Ask whatever you want, and I will grant you that. So Nachiketa said, thank you very much, Lord Yamaraj. And he said, I want my father to be forgiven for whatever he said. You see the quality and character of that young child, right? 10 or 11, no more than 12, right? He's first saying, forgive my father. And when you send me back, and already he knows that he's going to go back, right? And when you send me back, my father must welcome me as though nothing has happened and we must both live in, love and light. Yama says, done. Tathastu, done. What's your second boon? The second boon is, I want to know everything that is to be known with regards to performing these yajnas and how that yajna can reach heaven and how the yajnas can prevent things like hunger, thirst, fear of death, all those kind of things. Yama said, no problem. That's easily done, right? Tathastu, second one done. Then Yama gave him these boons. So when he was teaching him, he came up with a new ritual, a new yajna, and this was called Nachiketa Agni Yajna. Nachiketa Agni Yajna. In fact, there are certain mantras that you chant when you're doing Nachiketa Agnihotra Agni Yajna, right? Nachiketa was, of course, listening so intentfully, so reverently, and he grasped everything was being said. And then Yama said, hang on a minute, the first boon is granted. The second boon now I've taught you. In fact, in your fame, I've created a new fire ritual, Nachiketa Agni Yajna. Now, but that's only two. What's your third one? This is where Yama was challenged, right? So the third one, Nachiketa was telling Yama, man is mortal. So every person who is born as a human being is subject to death. But I have read, and my father has told me that death is not the end. There is something called Atma that survives the body and the senses. Some argue that there is no such thing when the body dies. The Atma also goes with it, right? Now, I want you to tell me how to realize this Atman so that you are no longer subject to the cycle of birth and death. Look at the intelligence of this boy. At such a tender age, he is asking for the supreme secret of knowing that Brahman, Atman. Yama's thinking now. Yama's not saying anything to Nachiketa. He's just thinking. Now, I need, just like before something is given to you, they always test you to see whether you're entitled to it, whether you're deserving it, isn't it? Yama did not want to straight away agree and communicate the knowledge to him. So he said, let me test this fellow. Let me give you, instead of that, Nachiketa, let me give you all the wealth in the world, all the prosperity in the world, all the happiness in the world, all other knowledge that you need to live in such wealth and comfort. He placed before Nachiketa all types of attractive boons and comfort and all this. And Nachiketa said, "Oh, revered master, your description of the difficulty of understanding the Atma, and in place of that, giving me all these other boons, only makes me more intent on knowing that difficult thing which you say is difficult to understand." Yama said, "Are you sure? Even the Devas in Devaloka have a problem with this. So they are revolving in the Devaloka for, yugas. We remain there because they are at a stage where they are in their own comfort zone. So they don't evolve. But you want to evolve when you're not even, of the right age." So he says, I want to know this Atmanyana, self-knowledge. This alone will save me from everything else, O Lord Yama. And then Yama says, okay, I can see that you are truly focused, you are truly committed, you are truly interested. So I will initiate you as my disciple. So that is the first thing. Yama accepts Nachiketa, right? And he now is going to give him the instruction on Atmic wisdom. So he was pleased with Nachiketa's faith, his steadiness, and his commitment to wanting to know. Then he starts. He says there are two distinct type of urges and experiences in spirituality. And I've spoken about this before anyway. I can't remember when, but I very clearly know. I have spoken. The two types or the two distinct types of experiences is called Shreyas and Preyas. S-R-E-Y-A-S, Shreyas, and Preyas is P-R-E-Y-A-S. Shreyas is something that spiritually elevates. Preyas is something that is worldly present. So if you like, I will draw this similarity of this Shreyas and Preyas to Karma Kanda, which is Preyas, and Jnana Kanda, which is Shreyas, right? The first releases, Shreyas releases, the second leashes. One releases whilst the other leases. One frees you from the cycle of birth and death. One puts you in continuity of that same cycle. One leads to salvation, the other leads to incarceration. right? So he says the first thing you must realize is which path you want to take, right? The spiritually excellent path can only be discerned by those who have a refined intellect, whereas all others will readily choose the worldly pleasant path. That is, those who are still ignorant. Spiritual wisdom, Yama says, spiritual wisdom, Vidya, reveals Shreyas, whilst avidya, ignorance, makes you slide into the worldly pleasure. Naturally, you coming here and asking me shows that you are clearly on the path of Shreyas. So I shall instruct you about the Atma, right? He said the Atma is also known as the Brahman. So the first thing I want to tell you is the instructor is Brahman, the instruction is Brahman, and he who is being instructed is also Brahman. When you see no difference between the three and you can draw a linear similarity between these three, then know that that is the final Atman, where you, the Jiva, and the Atman merge. The Jivatma, the Paramatma, right? That is when you become the realized soul, Atma Jnani, it is called. Jivan Mukti, right? This is the first thing. The great mystery, that Brahman mystery, cannot be simply grasped by mere logic or sensible thinking. You have to go beyond. It must be won by reading and knowing and experience. Reading and knowing and experience. Many of you out there may read, and pursuant to that reading, you may know. But the question is, without experiencing that knowledge as a result of that reading, you are getting nowhere. You're getting nowhere. The Atma is only capable of being known through sincere perseverance, not giving up, knowing. One has to divert the mind from natural habitat into a spiritual habitat and live in that spiritual habitat, slowly detaching yourself. That is why those days the rishis, when they go into, tapas, penance, they do it for years because they're completely detached. In their mind, there's only one thing reverberating, right? Through mantric vibrations, they will touch it. Om Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya. That is just a means to an end. Om Namo Narayana Namaha, Om Namo Narayana Namaha. Means to an end. Om Namo Brahmane Namaha, Om Namo Brahmane Namaha. That's all you're reciting. Everything is reverberating on that. And that will take you. That's just like the sat nav, take you to the destination, right? So he says that is the first thing. And he says this, Nachiketa, even though I am telling you, you are privileged because I am telling you this, but it's a highest truth that can be realized by anybody. That is the Vedantic philosophy. He said, they have this. Where you come from, it is there. Some talk about it, some practice it, the rest just ignore it. Right? The Vedic teachings from all the Vedic scriptures, from all the Upanishads, I can tell you, right? If you compare to the expansion and to the teachings that is taking place, only about 30% is taking place in India. Because people are not interested in India. Vedas, Upanishads, no. Thank you very much. You know where it's happening? 70% is happening in the West. In the US and in Europe, more than any other place, right? And the center for Vedic expansion is Germany, right? And they have different types. They have waves, World Association of Vedic Scholars, European Association of Vedic Scholars, right? Like that. So I only know because, I have become a member of all this just to know what they are doing with our heritage, right? Purely from an exploratory perspective, right? Because they don't actually, teach, they don't do what I am doing here like this. So it's very little to learn, but they have kept some of the manuscripts are still there in these countries, and it's just there, and it's proliferated in different ways, but very little teaching is being done. But compared to India, they're much better. They're doing so many things, right? So he says the first point of how you connect to that Brahman who is all pervading is by reciting the Pranava mantra. What is the Pranava mantra? Is Om. And again, I spoke about Om in one of the Upanishads. Akara, Ukara, Makara, the past, the present, the future. 3 stages, 3 gunas, 3 murtis, 3 devis, 3 kalas, right? All this. Pranava. The Pranava mantra, Om, is the simple is the simple mantra, but which is the symbol of transcendental and immanent Paramananda Brahman, right? So the Om must firstly vibrate within your own body, going up to the mind, vibrating there, and then this expands from inside to outside, and then completely covers the world, and then from the world it goes up. At one point, you will hit the center point, and that's where you will get in touch with the Hiranyagarbha. Hiranyagarbha, the Parabrahman. That's where you see. So he's telling this highest truth can be realized by all by, connecting through Om. Connecting through Om. And he says the Atma is beyond senses. That thing is saying Atma is beyond senses. If you focus on your senses, you will lose it. If you focus not on your senses, but outside your senses, then you will reach the Atman. The Atma is not measurable. If something is not measurable, that means it is beyond limitations. At least this is true of the Atma. Like, you can say anything about the sun, but does it affect the sun? The image of the sun on a lake moves because the water is moving. So the image of the sun also moves. It quivers and it shakes because of the situation of the lake. But the sun in a distant place is not affected at all. It still shines brightly and effulgently, right? The tejas is still there. It is not affected by how it is seen, how it is viewed, how it is perceived, how it is conceived, how it is understood, how it is explored, and how it is explained. It is unaffected because it is not subject to any limitation. The media, NASA can say so many things about the sun. Still, it is not affected. In the same way, the sun is a witness to everything that happens to you, to me, and to everything in this world. The Atman, the Atma, is a witness of all this change in space and in time as long as you live in this world. The Nachiketa is listening. My God, what a fantastic revelation. But it's not easy, Nachiketa, because there will be a lot of things that come in front of the Jivi and will try and detract him. This is known as Maya. Unless your buddhi is sharpened with the very razor you're walking on, you use the razor to sharpen your intellect. Don't be victim and fall off it because it's so sharp, but use it instead to sharpen your intellect and finish the journey and reach the bliss point. Counterforce, ignorance, right? Ajnana. That's why you should never give credence to these momentary pleasures that the senses are constantly pointing you towards. External. Turn them inward, make them internal. Put them out of action. Discard them as false. Call them misleading. Merge them all in your mind. Make them subject to your command. That is cosmic intelligence. Cosmic intelligence. Remember once I spoke to you about which particular Upanishad? I spoke to you about the 5 sheets, the 5 koshas, right? Vijnanamaya kosha. This is talking about Vijnanamaya kosha. See how fantastically related they are, And as you go deeper and deeper, at the end of the day, right, you can say 13 Upanishads, 108 Upanishads, 1008 Upanishads, they all tell you the same thing in a different way. So you got 1008 songs in different languages, if you like, but they're all focusing on one central message. Know thyself. I am Atman Brahma, Tat Tvam Asi, right? Prajnanam Brahma, Aham Brahmasmi. That is the core callings of each of the Vedas, 4 Vedas, the 4 Mahavakyas. And the Upanishads, in their volume of explanation and exploration and exploitation, they say the same thing, right? You must, in this life, then Yama says, to attain the stage of perfect, unruffled equanimity of absolute oneness, Nirvikalpa Samadhi, this is what we call Nirvikalpa Samadhi, which will reveal your true self, right? This is what you should be trying for. And indeed, by you being here, you are halfway there. But I just cannot tell you things without testing whether you are actually ready for this. So Nachiketa says, I am ready, but what is the problem with people, At this young age, I can appreciate some of the things you're saying, but what is the problem with the people on earth? Why are they not latching on to this, which you say is readily available for the mass? He said, because assume you are in a desert. You are misled by the mirage. You think there is a tree there. Under the tree, there's a little, puddle of water, and you go there, and it's not there. And then suddenly you see images of a huge snake or a huge animal, and even that is not there. This is because you cannot distinguish between what is real and what is unreal. Hence, the first Upanishad we looked at, I spoke to you, the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, I said to you, you say the prayer, isn't it? Asat Toma Sat Kamaya, Tamastoma Jodit Kamaya, Mrityorma Mardam Gamaya. Lead me from the unreal to the real. He's coming back to that. He said, this beginningless delusion and endless delusion. So it has got no beginning, it has got no end. This is what haunts the individual Jivatma. And that is what you need to break. Right? And if you want a specific reference to this, if you have access to the original version or the original translated version of the original version, then you can look at the 14th mantra of this Katha Upanishad, right? It will tell you what you can chant in order to do that. But it's written in such a poetic language, you need to discern it properly, translate and then discern it. But what it's saying is the Atma is beyond Shabda, sound, beyond Sparsha, touch, beyond Rupa, which is form, beyond Rasa, which is taste, and beyond Gandha, which is smell. It knows no end. Whereas you, O man, you are bound by these 5 senses. Atma goes beyond. No limitation. The senses are object and outward bound, whereas the Atma is objectless and inward bound. Very, very clear instructions Yama is giving to Nachiketa. The delusion of manifoldness, the variety of the different types of illusion, the multiplicity, the manyness that man has as wants must die. This is of Ajnana. And I covered this when I did Bhajagovindam with you. Bhajagovindam, fantastic. It just, everything summed up can be Bhajagovindam. Everything that I'm telling you, at the end of 15 weeks, all the Upanishadic wisdom is 30 verses of Bhajagovindam. Because, somebody sent me an email saying, brother, there's so much here, I know you've only chosen 13 Upanishads, but there's so much. How forget it. Just follow what I've said in Bhajagovindam. 30 verses, take 1 verse. Go with that. You don't want? Okay, follow my karma series. You don't want? Okay, follow what I said about Bhagavad Gita. 18 chapters. I told you the essence. Don't want? What did I say about Ramayana? Now I've come to the Upanishads. So I've given so many different pathways for you to evolve. Choose one. Choose one. And I'm coming to the choose one because this is exactly what Yama tells Nachiketa. Right? You think I'm telling you? No, Yama told Nachiketa this in Katha Upanishad. Right? Yama then describes and declares the nature of Brahman to Nachiketa to remove all his doubts. Remember, he's already, what do you call, what's the word? He's already accepted him and initiated him as his discipline, as his disciple. So he's removed all kinds of disturbances. Just him talking to Nachiketa. Nachiketa as the soul is listening. Right? But of course, Yama being who he is, Yama gave him the body that he had and was talking to him as Shishya and Guru in that parampara. Right? He says, you see the tree, but you don't see the roots. Or he said, man sees the tree, not the roots. But will the tree stand upright, holding everything that it does without the strength of the roots? So you, in the same way, must have this strength of what we call samsara vriksha. You must become a tree of life so that you get away from this worldly illusion, right? The roots is your roots. That is Brahman. That is what is holding you. But you, because you are away, out of the ground, you've grown, you've got branches, you've got flowers, you've got leaves, you've got all of that. You forget the roots that is your base, right? You have to go back to your roots. That's why they say always, never forget your roots. You know that adage, that expression, right? And Nachiketa understood this without any problem. His knowledge of Brahma Vidya that Yama is teaching him. And as a result of all this knowledge, remember, it's also a question answer, right? He attained Brahman. The moment you attain Brahman, you're released from the cycle of birth and death. And very cleverly, he asked for that as his third boon, right? So he became a Jivan Mukta as a result. He knows. So what are the lessons that come out of this Katha Upanishad? That's the story that has happened, but the end result of the story is he attained Jivan Mukti as a result of clear instructions by Lord Yamaraja, Dharmaraja. You know why he is called Dharmaraja? The king of Dharma, Yama, because he only measures you according to your actions that you have done. That account, finally, he will know. More good, okay. More bad, okay. I give you what you deserve according to your own actions. So how can you blame me? I am just enforcing the natural laws, karmic laws. But then you are like God, Lord Yama. Can you not change it? He says, how can I change it? I myself am subject to it. And he said, Krishna, when he came down as Krishna in the Mahabharata, many times, he knew in the battlefield of Kurukshetra, right? On the 13th or 14th day, when Arjuna's son Abhimanyu gets killed, he knew instantly that's going to happen. He couldn't stop it because he had no right to interfere with karma. That's why I've always mentioned to you, right? As far as Krishna is concerned, he never involved himself in the choice made by the Pandavas or the Kauravas, but he always gave them the choice. If you go down this path, this is the consequence. If you go down this path, this is the consequence. If you go down this path, this is the consequence. Now you choose. You will never say, this is what you should do. So God came down to earth and still subjected himself to the very laws that he had made, called the laws of karma. So who are you or me to question that and to say it doesn't exist? because he himself was bound by the curse of Gandhari after the end of the war. Gandhari cursed him and curse came through. He says, I can't do anything. This is karma, right? So coming back to what are the lessons that this wonderful Katha Upanishad teaches you. The first thing Yama said to Nachiketa is, learn to recite the Omkara so that what you are saying and what is reverberating in the universe is consistent. That's why it's called Pranavaswarupa. You know, that's one beautiful bhajan I used to sing long ago. Om 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 Gurudeva Om 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 Param Brahma. The Om is your Guru, and through your Guru, you can reach that Param Brahma. Fantastic. So, learn to recite the Om, and Swami has said, every morning when you get up, recite it. How many times you must recite? How many times you want to recite? Are you following some dictation? No. I want to do 9 times, do 9 times. At the end of the day, it's you, what you choose to do, what you resolve to do, and the Creator. So why listen to Mr. X or Miss Y or Mr. Z saying, you have to do it 25 times between 4 in the morning and 5 in the morning? Who is he to tell you when to communicate with God? I told you the story of Hanuman, right? Who heard the name of Ram. And the moment he hears the name of Ram, he becomes enslaved. Just the name of Ram. That's the power in the name. Rama Nama Taraka Mantraha. I told you this when I did Ramayana with you. Right? It is the mantra that can save, even from the face of death. So Hanuman was flying to see Rama, and he heard Rama, 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 Rama. So he went, and he saw this man was doing his business in the toilet. So he caught this man and gave him one on the face and said, how dare you insult my Lord's name when you're doing this, dirty business? And then he flew to Ram. And when he saw Ram, Ram's face was swollen. He asked, who did this to you? Tell me. This moment, I will end their life. He says, you did this to me, Hanuman. Me? I am the one. Pada Sparsha Bhaktaha. I'm only here to serve you by worshipping your feet. How could I have, He says, who do you think, what name do you think saved that man when you picked him and gave him a slap? That name, my name. And I'm the owner of that name. So I took the impact, and this is the result. A swollen face. So you. Then he told Hanuman, there is no time, place, or space for anyone to call out to God. It is your relationship with God, your exclusive relationship with God. You will pray when you want to pray. At the end of the day, we get so taken by all these injunctions, by all these rules, regulations, everything. So we don't do what we're supposed to do. Communicate whenever, wherever, however you want with him. And this was the secret of his first teaching. Learn and practice the singular Omkara. You don't need anything else. This will take you deeper into the path of Shreyas, he said. Seek happiness, not passing pleasures. Perennial happiness is what he's talking about. Constant happiness, consistent happiness, bliss. That consistent happiness is bliss. Passing pleasures are but temporary. Satisfying desire is even more temporary. Muda, like what Shankara said. Jahihi danagama trishnam. They move away from all these short-term joys. Then, in that conversation, he also instructed Nachiketa on consciousness. The 3 levels, what I said to you earlier. He said, man live in a state of just consciousness. He doesn't tap into his subconscious, and does not, by doing that, he does not allow the subconscious to connect with the superconscious. In order for you to see yourself, you must go within from the conscious layer to the subconscious layer, right? This is the second of the koshas, isn't it? through pranamaya kosha, through your breathing, you go to the manonmaya kosha. Then only you can go to the vijnanamaya kosha. Once you're there, the next stage is anandamaya kosha. Finish. No? So go to yourself, through yourself in order to realize that self. If that is the route to Mrityorma Amritam Gamaya. And those who are wise will go through that path. Once Buddha was sitting under the tree, and his disciple was sitting under the tree as well. So he was just meditating, but his disciple was disturbed in his meditation because a fly constantly kept coming on, sitting on him. So he was like meditating and then, just pushing off the fly. And then Buddha opened his eyes and he said, focus on what you're doing and the fly will not bother you. Focus on the fly and everything will bother you. The same fly also comes and sits on me. But when the fly realizes that I am not affected by it, the fly moves away. So the problem solved. Then his disciple did that and the fly never bothered him. So if we focus on the problem, we enlarge the problem. We focus on the solution, the problem ceases to exist. This is also a path to self-realization, it says. And self never dies. The eternal self cannot be slaughtered, cannot slaughter. The body dies, the Atman of the self doesn't. So don't give too much of importance. You need a healthy body, right? Don't get me wrong. But more than a healthy body, you need a healthy mind, right? And the pure consciousness does not come from the body, it comes from the mind. Because remember, when you go into meditation, there is 3 stages, isn't it? You have the dreaming stage, right? Then you have the dreamless state, the deep sleep state, and then you have the waking state. So these 3 levels are conscious, subconscious, and superconscious. So you have to practice it in that way. Then you will clearly see the difference between yourself, the body, the mind, the senses, the ego. You can clearly discern between these. The self lives in light, whereas the ego lives in darkness. The self embraces both the good and the evil, whereas the ego only welcomes everything that promotes its own self, nothing else. Only sweet, sweet things. You say something nasty about me, I lash out at you. But the self knows that the world is full of good and bad, so it accepts both, but it is not affected by both. That journey is not affected. So I said, train your mind. Whatever good people say, don't accept. Whatever bad people say, don't accept. Then you're training your mind to go beyond this. But if you train your mind to accept something good, then the mind will also accept something bad. Because you cannot, train it to take one and not the other, right? That is the way to seek the true self. Now, who can realize the self? Ayama said, everybody can, right? You have taken, a step towards me in a totally different way. As a result of that, I have rewarded you with Nachiketa Agni Yajna in recognition of yourself. And I've also, through instructing you, I've also given you this wonderful endless life, Jivan Mukti, right? So Yama's explanation to Nachiketa is actually, talking about different explication of certain Hindu metaphysics, right? And it focuses on a few points. And I'm going to tell you these points as a conclusion, right? First, number 1 is the sound of Om. The Om is the syllable of the Supreme Brahman, right? That is why the Pranava is also called Brahma Swarupa. Pranava Swarupa. So he says, recite the Om, right? He says the symbol of the Om, which is sound, light, reverberance, endless, no limits, is the same like the Atman. That is why you should say it in order to latch it, The goal of the wise is to know the Atma. The goal of everyone else is to live a good life in life. It says the Atma is the rider. The horses are the senses, which is guided through the maze of desire. And I gave you this symbolic of these icons when I did Mahabharata with you, just that picture of that Mahabharata. After death, Atma remains because the Atma is immortal, but the body perishes. And depending on your karmic debts, your next stage is determined. Then another thing that came out of is mere reading of scriptures or intellectual regurgitation cannot realize the Atma. It has to be experienced, right? And one must discriminate the Atma from the body, right? Which is the seat of desire. The body is a seat of desire, but the Atma is above that. So when you focus on desires, you are losing touch with Atma, right? The inability to realize Brahman does not come from outside, it comes from within. And you have gone within, and because you've gone within, now you've come out of it, right? From outside, you must learn how to go inside, and once you're inside, you must come out, totally free. So he got the status of Jivan Mukta, right? And one question Nachiketa asked Yama before going. He said, if you can tell me 3 ways on how to control this desire and focus on that Brahman, what 3 things would you say, Lord Yama? Yama said, dhyana, meditation, yoga, right? That is the balance between the body, the mind, and the soul. And of course, restraining your senses. That's why in one of the Bhajagovindam, I talked about, Yogaratova, Bhogaratova, Sangaratova, Sangavihina, Yasyat Brahmani, Brahmani, until you focus on this, Nandati, Nandati, Nandati Eva, you're going to go round and round. So, when your 5 senses are stilled, that's why before we started, I always ask you to still your mind. When your 5 senses are stilled, the senses can be still if the surrounding circumstances are stilled. The 5 senses are stilled, so is the mind. And when the mind is stilled, the intellect does not stir it. This is called the highest state. The highest state, this state, is the steady control of the senses, is called Yogasana. And that is the very essence of Katha Upanishad. Next week, we will look at Isha Upanishad, otherwise known as Ishavasya Upanishad, right? Ishavasya Upanishad or Isha Upanishad is the same. Okay. So as a result of that 1 week we missed, we will now continue until the last Sunday in December, right? This is week 8. So we've got 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. So we've just passed the halfway mark. We've got 7 more weeks, 6 more Upanishads, and the final week, which is a conclusion or a review or a consolidation and a Q&A session, right? So you are free to ask me, any questions that you feel burdened to ask, as a result of following me in this wonderful journey, of going into the Upanishads. You see, you are so lucky. Being where you are, you're just getting all the juice being squeezed for you, being put in a nice little glass or container and say, here, drink it. But don't get me wrong, it gives me great pleasure to do that. Because I have to drink it first in order to be able to give you the right sort of, taste, color, content, So, Anyada Sharanam Nasti Tvameva Sharanam Mahatasmat Karunya Bhavena Raksharaksha Sai Ishvara. Harihi Om Tat Sat Sri Sathya Sai Ishvara Yanamah.